Oh, today's going to be a great show, everybody. We got Chef Andrew Gruel in the house. Of course, he started on Food Network. He is now the founder of American Gravy Restaurant Group and is it a video show called American Gravy? Where do I say? Yeah. Okay, all right, hold on. And of course, he has been a warrior in so many respects. We'll talk to him about how this happened to him. He's, of course, been on Gutfeld regularly. I met him over at Adam Carolla's show, where he's been a few times. His latest book is Andrew Gruel's Family Cookbook. Is that correct? Okay, we'll get into that. And after a few, there it is. And after a few, and his wife is actually here across the room from us, so she's here too. The Raw Egg Nationalist will join us at the bottom of the hour. He's the author of Anonymously Yours, essays from 2020 to 2024. He is behind the X site Baby Gravy 9, and he is an outspoken gentleman. He's part of having appeared in Tucker Carlson's documentary, The End of Men. He's got some ideas. We all got ideas. We'll get to them all after this. Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. I want to teach you about pharmacogenomic testing. This is changing the way we approach healthcare. By analyzing a patient's genetic profile, pharmacogenomics helps physicians personalize drug treatments for more effective results. First, it enhances medication efficacy by predicting how a patient will respond to a specific drug, reducing the trial and error process, especially in mental health care. For example, it can guide the choice of various medications to minimize side effects and improve outcomes. In the long run, pharmacogenomic testing leads to cost savings. It shortens the time to find the right treatment and avoids expensive side effects. It also supports more personalized care, helping physicians make better decisions and ensuring that treatments are tailored to each individual's unique genetic makeup. Test simply requires you to swab your cheek, then you send in the sample to our lab. Discover the power of personalized medicine with pharmacogenomic testing. Tailor your treatments based on your unique genetic makeup. Reduce trial and error, avoid side effects, find the most effective medication for you. Take control of your health today. Go to drdrew.com/checkgenetics. That is drdrew.com/checkgenetics. Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsidin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects. No chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsidin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsidin so unique. In clinical trials, capsidin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using capsidin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsidin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. Of course, is currently having an issue with her hands.
So Susan, of course. Sorry, your mic wasn't on.
Oh, Susan, of course, having issue with her hand and has been using the capsidin regularly to good effect.
I had stem cells injected in my joints, and it really hurt. And I was like, God, this pain's so bad. And then I put the capsidin on, and it worked.
She had it not in the joints, but in the tendon here. And so the nerves are nearby, and they got kind of inflamed. And this really, really worked for her.
Post-op. It's awesome.
So thank you for that, Susan. Chef Andrew Gruel, you can follow him on X, Chef Gruel. It's CHEF, of course, GRUEL on X. The book, Andrew Gruel's family cookbook. It's launching this week. There's Chef Gruel. Thank you, Chef. ChefGruel.com is where you can go. And the restaurant I want everybody to go to is in Huntington Beach. It is the Calico Fish House. Literally one of the best experiences we've ever had eating fish. And it's not easy to find great fish in Southern California. It's kind of hit and miss, and there's a lot of frozen stuff that comes out.
Not smelly either.
It's not. It doesn't smell like fish. But thank you for coming all the way out and being in our house. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So tell us about the book.
Well, the book is a family cookbook. We did this in partnership with Brave Books, which is really about, kind of telling new stories for kids, kind of non-woke. Kirk Cameron is kind of the head of all that, and Brave Books is a wonderful series. Funny enough, my kids have been reading the Brave Books. It's a series that comes once a month for since inception, so a couple years now. And then we talked about doing a cookbook. The idea behind the cookbook is get the families in the kitchen, right? The best way we can break what we're seeing in terms of all of these chronic illnesses with food, especially in kids, is by getting them to understand where their food comes from. Wonderful side effect is when you cook as a family. We've got 4 kids. It is an amazing activity. Yeah. Pure chaos. It's
Are your
fun.
kids all into? I think you had 2 of them at the restaurant when we were there. And are they all into it, or some of them like, that's Dad's thing, I'm not doing that?
They're all into
it.
Because my wife is also a trained chef. We're both into restaurants. The kids are always around food. So it's kind of their way of like, oh, we want to do it. We want to crack the eggs. We want to cut the strawberries.
Amazing.
The base. Unfortunately, they don't always want to load the dishwasher.
Oh, well, there's that.
But
surprised you have a dishwasher. All my restaurateur friends like, why do I want to wash dishes twice? Yeah. They want to wash them and then put them away.
Exactly. That's true. That's a good point. But we created about 50 recipes that are really focused on hands-on, no seed oils, all fresh ingredients, and ways in which the parents and the kids. So what's kind of cool about this is that we wrote the recipes. Lauren and I did this together. She did all the photography. The kids tested them with us. So, when you write a cookbook, you want to make sure the recipes work.
Yeah.
So we went through trial and error over and over again. The kids are the ones who tested a lot of them. And we say that this also can work for college students, right? If you are single, you don't have to bring your family into this, because these are also just gateway recipes to get yourself into the kitchen.
Oh, that's weird. I normally don't get sound on this. Go ahead, keep going.
And to get comfortable. I was thinking, who was that guy?
That's interesting. But so where do they go to get the book? I love the Brave guys. It's really very wholesome storytelling, and it makes. When I'd spoken to those guys over the years, and they had not conceived of this. Is this your idea, or do they have this idea?
The cookbook was really, we reached out and said, hey, we've been buying the books. I think they went and looked, and they were like, wow, he is an early subscriber. Yeah. Why don't we do some food? I see more ahead, because it fits so perfectly with what their goals are and stuff. Yeah.
And will kids come away? Well, first of all, where do they go to get it?
So right now we're doing pre-sales at andrewcookbook.com.
Andrewcookbook.com. Yep. All right. So Caleb, I don't know if it's okay. Can you put a lower third on that or anything, or that's asking too much? Andrewcookbook.com.
Sorry, Susan was andrewcookbook.com. Okay, got it. I'll put it up.
Andrewcookbook.com. Yeah, exactly. But if our kids, by getting and reading the book and putting their getting their hands dirty, quite literally, going to learn about sourcing foods and that kind of stuff.
Well, I think that's, the bigger conversation, right? At least they know what food creates what dish.
Okay.
And they understand raw ingredients. And that's step 1, is understanding that it's really a mathematical equation. 1 + 1 = 2, right? So flour and water equals dough.
Yeah.
Something that simple. But it gets them excited and gets them in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And I think that breaks the habit of just picking up something off the shelf that's in a box that's got a bunch of ingredients that you don't know where it came from. And it gets them excited.
Did I ask you this? Do you know Kate Shanahan? She's the physician that really championed the seed oil problem.
Not personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she'll love that. She brought her name up here. She's been fighting this fight so quietly on her own for quite some time. There's the book up there. You see it. And now she has champions all over the place. Yourself, me, and RFK Jr. And he is really getting quite vocal about wanting to go in there and change things. Do you have a sense or do you have a wish list of what he should do when he gets in there? Because it's such a bureaucratic morass.
Yeah, and I think that that's the problem is that there's always these great ideas. And I talk about this generally in politics. Everybody kind of wants good, right?
Yeah.
It's just we have different ways of getting there.
Yes.
And on the one side, it's, the unintended consequence in many cases is adding more layers of government, which actually takes you further away from the end
Yes.
goal. So I would say, the first and foremost, it's actually removing those layers of bureaucracy and allowing local communities to have more access to the schools and the students by way of food. So if you look here in California, there's farms everywhere. There's local food purveyors everywhere. They can't sell directly to the food, to the schools themselves. And local chefs aren't the ones who are actually putting the food together for a lot of these school programs.
Yeah.
When it comes to the public side of this,
This is
with kids.
California now.
California
Yeah.
or any state for that matter,
Okay.
because the rubric is kind of scaled across most states
Okay.
on a federal level. So how can we pull that back and empower local communities, parents to get involved, whether it's volunteer or not, and to bring good food to the schools where you don't need to get an approved purveyor who has to sign a multi-million-dollar contract.
It sounds like in this state, I can't imagine. They're all so adulterated and so either bureaucratically ossified or frankly paid off. I'm sure of it.
Well, it is, and I don't think it's paid off in the nefarious sense of somebody slipping an envelope full of cash, but it's it's cronyism, right?
Yeah.
Like I know this guy,
Yes.
he runs a company, therefore
100%.
he gets an in. And this was like when I worked for major food companies or hotels like the Marriott, right? They use a massive buying service, and it has to be that approved by that buying service. That distills you down to like 10 different products or 10 different purveyors.
When you
huge.
say it has to be, I'll interrupt you. When you say it has to be, is that a law or is that a corporate thing?
That's a corporate thing,
Yeah.
but that, I think that we're starting to see the playbook is similar between big government and big corporations.
Fascism, baby, live
Yeah.
and well.
Yeah, exactly. So corporatism, if you will, and that applies. So if I'm, running a massive school system, I can't just go out and say, okay, well, this farmer can provide X product to these schools. It has to go through this entire, process, this regulatory highway
Yeah.
that by the end of the day, millions of dollars have been spent and they're getting microwaved processed cheese on, bagel toast.
This is what I worry about with, the government providing food to kids. Is like, no, I want kids to eat. I don't want them to starve. But parents, first of all, should be involved with it, much as your cookbook points out. And telling parents they don't need to feed their own kids is a weird thing for a society to do. And then you're getting food that is, it's got to be worse than McDonald's. It's just a mass processed food.
It's
right?
horrible. It's horrible. And I mean, because of the fact that you've got, the three-letter agencies that say, well, we want this to be safe, right? And safe food is different than good food, because safe food to me implies a lot of chemicals, a lot of preservatives, a lot of these different forms of sodium that can cure it and make sure. And then at the end of the day, you're left with a chemical that's safe in the sense they're not going to get food poisoning.
Right. So it kills bacteria and keeps food from being rancid or bacteria developing within the food at the cost of it being processed and filled with chemicals and antibiotics and things.
Yeah. And look, and I take this personally because I was the symptom, if you will, of that type of a system, right? I grew up on microwave processed food. I had two working parents. We didn't cook at home, and I'm not putting that against my parents. They were hardworking parents.
And plus back then, by the way, that was considered progress. That's how we did stuff.
It was considered huge progress.
TV dinners, man.
Yes.
That was the future.
I remember. I mean, it was.
Remember
like,
the space food sticks and things like that? What do they serve the astronauts? Madison Avenue's had their way with us forever. But
well, it's funny because ironically, going off on a tangent here, is sous vide, which is now fine dining. Everybody has an immersion circular induced soup. That started from processed food manufacturers for like airplanes and hospitals, and now it's sheesh and avant-garde. But yeah, that processed food, the space food. I mean, I always joke. I say Christmas morning, it was me, the family, and Sarah Lee.
So Sarah Lee, I remember Sarah Lee's stuff. And so what changed for you? What happened and then what changed?
Yeah, well,
so I want you to take us through your evolution through food and training and education, all that stuff.
Two working parents all the time, right?
Where were you at the time?
New Jersey. I'm home a lot alone, and I used to fake being sick, as most kids do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I got obsessed at the age of 12, 13 of sitting at home and watching old PBS cooking shows. Jan Can Cook, Jacques Pepin, Julia Childs, like the original cooking
Julia
shows.
Childs from Pasadena. It all happened right here, not far from here, by the way.
So I used to play with food in the kitchen, and I was like, I love this. It's part chemistry. I could eat it, and then I'd clean it up before my mom got home.
Wow.
And then when it came time for me to get my first job growing up, it was, well, let me go work in kitchens, restaurants, etc., washing dishes. And that was always kind of a secondary thing. I never thought it would become a career. I went to college, studied Bates College, small liberal arts college up in Maine, studying piano performance and philosophy, while I was working full-time in restaurants, working at the lobster docks. And there was kind of this aha moment where I said, I enjoy spending time in kitchens more than I do in school.
How far did you, I mean, Bates is a high, super high-end liberal arts school, really, and particularly back then, it was really probably good, right? You probably had a good education. I mean, it's gotten a little adulterated in recent years, as many of them have, including mine. But you used to go to liberal arts schools to think about things and study philosophy and political philosophy. How far did you go there?
I went about 2 years. Now, where this gets interesting is that I had horrible stomach problems growing up at the age of 13 on. Undiagnosed, it was always IBS. It was these syndromes. Yeah. To the point where when I got into my first and second year in college, I couldn't leave my dorm room. That's how bad it was. Yeah. And it started to create anxiety, and it really changed who I was as a person. Now, the irony of all this is I found solace in the kitchen because I never had to go anywhere.
Oh.
When I worked in the kitchens, I was there for 12 hours working. And then that's when I left school and said, I'm just going to stay in kitchens. I can do this. I don't have to travel. I don't have to walk around. I don't have to do anything. So the irony is, a chef with horrible stomach problems, it pulled me into the kitchen full time.
Interesting.
Fell in love with it. Now, decades later, come to find out, my stomach problems are healed, is that it was all the food I was eating.
And was it college food, that kind of thing that was doing
college
it?
Food exacerbated the problem, but I think in the very beginning, it was just processed ingredients, junk food, seed oils.
And it makes me think about some of the stuff you brought today. We're going to eat some of your food. You brought some crazy stuff, but this is a replacement for junk, is it not?
Yeah. I mean, beef tallow fried chips. This is Ancient Crunch Masa chips. They've got multiple flavors. Unbelievable, but no seed oils, fried in beef tallow.
You have to be really careful with seed oils. I mean, it's in everything. You have to read every label carefully. Yep. You'll find it all over the place. So now you leave Bates and go to work?
Well, so I left Bates, and I actually traveled out west to work for the Grand Teton Lodge Company over the summer, working in a restaurant there. Because I kind of had this Kerouac, Edward Abbey idea that I was going to be like a writer. I was into the environment, which I think will come up later, is important. I was a big environmentalist, right? That old school Sierra Club style.
When was this?
This was early on from 15, 16.
But what date?
2000 I left school. Okay,
so I was part of the 70s environmental movement.
Yeah.
And then it was acid rain, algae blooms in rivers and lakes, and what else did we worry about? Ice age was coming, and no oil within 10 years. We had to come up with an alternative energy source. So convinced of all of it.
So recall like Monkey Wrench Gang, Edward Abbey, like that drove me out west.
Yep.
And I did a stint there, and then ultimately went.
And by the way, that there's nothing more beautiful than that lodge.
Oh, yes.
That's at the foothill. You're looking out at the Tetons all day.
It was the great, and once again, still had the stomach issues, could work in a kitchen 12, 14 hours, go walk around in the woods. I was a runner too, distance runner, athlete. So it was like the most beautiful place in the world. Met a really great chef there because they had actually had a really good culinary program. And they got me into an apprenticeship in Timberline Lodge on Mount Hood through the winter. So I did a 1-year apprenticeship up on where they filmed The Shining.
Mount Hood is in Maryland?
Oregon.
That Mount Hood, yes.
Did that program there, and then went back and said, I'm going to go finish my degree at Johnson & Wales University, which was in Denver. Did a formal program there to get my culinary arts degree.
I thought Johnson & Wales was in Rhode Island.
It is. The hub's in Rhode Island, and they have satellite campuses.
I see.
I did the culinary program in Denver, worked for some great chefs there, went back east.
Were your parents freaking out when you were running around the West?
They were a little bit, right? Because my dad who was,
You'll get yours. Your kid's going to pay him back.
They are going to. My dad, who was in the military, he said, this is your version of finding yourself. I went to the military. You just go find yourself.
Good. That's good that he did that. That's amazing.
Yeah. But they knew I would eventually come around. And then once I got back in and did the schooling and went and worked for the Ritz-Carlton for a little while, and then I went back to school.
In Denver?
I went to Boston after the Denver program. While I was working at the Ritz, I was going to school full-time at the Johnson & Wales campus to get go through my business program.
So you
And then
did. So you got part philosophy, part piano. Did you keep playing the piano through all this?
Not really. I was cutting my fingers off.
All right. And then Johnson Wales. Well, first kitchen training at the lodge, and then Johnson Wales kitchen, and then Johnson Wales business.
Correct.
Yeah, got it. Yep. It's a lot. It's a lot. And now everybody go to Calico Fish House if you want to see it and get an example of how great the food is as a result of all that training. It's just ridiculous. And so here you are. You've done all these extraordinary training. And how did you end up out here?
Well, so after working in restaurants for a while, 2008 hit, the economy kind of...
In New England?
In New England, yeah. All over New England, and then I ended up back in New Jersey.
What do you mean all over New England?
I was in New Hampshire, Boston, Maine, just kind of bouncing around, working for different chefs, opening some restaurants, learning the business of it, learning the sourcing, right? My big thing, I think my first TV was in 2005. I did like a PBS show. Everything was sourced from New Hampshire.
Did you want to do that kind of show because you'd watched it as a kid?
Yes.
That's so
that's
fun.
why I thought it was so cool.
Yeah.
I had a radio show called Cooking with Gruel when I was like 24, 25.
Oh my God.
So loved that aspect of it. Ended up back in New Jersey, was opening or ran a few restaurants there. The economy crashes in 2008, lose my job. And coincidentally, there was an opportunity a headhunter brought to me that there was the Aquarium of the Pacific here in Long Beach was starting a sustainable seafood program. It wasn't like the consumer-focused program. This was a program where they were trying to recruit chefs to serve more of the right types of seafood. They were looking for somebody with a marketing degree, a food background, who understood seafood and the environment. So we got a grant from the Pacific Life Foundation. It was a 3-year program.
Did you have to come to Long Beach?
Came to Long Beach.
I ate some of your tuna that you carefully sourced.
Yep.
Amazing.
What I learned about seafood was, first of all, 80% of the seafood in the U.S. is imported.
Yeah.
And yet we have the most plentiful fisheries in the world. Why are we importing all of it? Why are we serving seafood that we wouldn't raise here by environmental standards, but we'll buy it from other countries? So there was this kind of like,
what is that?
Well, it's just out of sight, out of mind. We're the only country with no open ocean aquaculture policy because we don't want to foul our oceans because we can't come up with a comprehensive framework for how to manage it, how the government can oversee it. So instead, we buy it from countries that do trash their oceans. It's backwards.
Oh yeah, this was going on in the 70s. I remember these kinds of topics coming up.
Yeah.
I think it all got going then.
It started, well, aquaculture began it. Aquaculture's been around for thousands of years. It's primitive, but the actual commercial industry started in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I remember it.
And it was very poo-pooed upon by the environmental groups. But the irony there is that we say we're not going to do it, so instead we buy it from countries who are doing it in a really poor manner.
Yep.
So I got obsessed with seafood and just kind of immersed myself in that world of, quote, sustainable seafood, which what does that even mean anymore? Really just well-managed seafood. And then ultimately, after the grant was over, parlayed that into a business, Slapfish. Started with one food truck. I said, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to serve only locally caught, sustainable seafood. Grew that from one food truck to 30 plus locations.
I always forget about the food truck, and that's how you became a judge on a food truck.
Correct.
Food channel show. Yeah.
Started becoming kind of the face of like food truck business, and then
how'd you get over to Fox News?
That's a great question. Well, after doing Food Network, FYI, back to Food Network and a lot of TV over a decade, when the pandemic hit, and I'd kind of always kept my ideas, my political leanings quiet, although I was involved in youth and government, Model UN, all that growing up. When the pandemic hit, I started speaking out about the insanity of what was going on.
Got it.
Got canceled, and
I knew you're in good company here.
Yeah. And then it was funny. I would go
this
on.
show, by the way, you asked about how this show got going. We originally just started talking to people who got canceled. I just wanted to hear what they had to say because they were canceling extraordinary people. They must have something to say. I want to hear it. And lo and behold, your poster child for that whole syndrome was Jay Bhattacharya. Oh, really? You're going to cancel that guy? Well done. So keep going. Canceled.
And I was speaking out about the ways in which we were managing employees, team members, dealing with COVID. Originally, it was very, very kind of anodyne stuff, just the ins and the outs of running a business in the COVID era. And so I was on a lot of networks, right? I was on CNN. I was on different channels.
And you were able to keep your business open in spite of the shutdown.
Well,
is that because of Orange County?
yeah, because of Orange County. And in the beginning, we closed, but we were also very vocal about ways in which we felt that we were able to provide a safe environment for people to eat.
Listen, LA County, there were business restaurants that did that too, and they put fences around them.
Yeah, I know. Orange County was great.
Yeah.
We were very lucky.
Yes.
When Newsom shut down outdoor dining, that's when that was the straw that broke my back.
Yeah.
We said this is absurd.
Yeah.
You can go into Walmart, walk around on top of
You
one
go to a
another.
liquor store, you can go to a pot dispensary.
Yeah.
Welcome to California,
Strip
everybody.
clubs.
Strip clubs. We aim to take care of our citizens.
Yeah. So that was
What
it.
the fuck?
And then once I started kind of getting canceled, Fox said, "Yeah, come on, let's talk more." And then it just became a.
And then Gutfeld saw you and said he put you in.
I don't know when I ended up on Gutfeld. That was about a year and a half ago. I've been on probably 30 times. They invited me on once, and then
He sort of knows who he likes and who can do this. It's a certain thing you got to do. You're aware of it, and part of it is giving Greg shit, and sort of and not being too being funny and being able to play along with everybody. I've known Greg for 20 years, so I too used to be on everything all the time. Yep. And the intro to this show is a bunch of reels from me on the CW and me on CNN and HLN, where I had a show for like 8 years until actually. They decided to cancel it. Me and Nancy Grace and everybody, they just canceled all of us. But the reason I did not go back to CNN after my show was canceled is I was on Don Lemon's show, which I did regularly, and he was like, "This Trump guy, what's up with him?" I was like, "Well, I've tried to." I was talking about personality and mental health in the White House, which there's been a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of narcissism. There's been a lot of drug use. There's been alcoholism. There's been all kinds of stuff. And I said, but, some of my favorite presidents were severely depressive or bipolar or alcoholic. Grant was a severe alcoholic, but he managed to kind of keep it under control during the White House, and he was a wonderful president. And so fine, I went out the next morning. I get to my radio. I had a daytime radio show here in Los Angeles at the time. I go in and I go, my program director, the general manager of the radio station goes, "Oh, that was really interesting. Would you do 30 seconds of that for our website about Trump and his personality and other presidents' personalities?" So yeah, okay. Sat down, I do 30 seconds. And he goes, it's a election year. You got to kind of balance it. Could you do 30 seconds on Hillary? I said, well, funny thing, she released her medical record this morning, and her care, I got issues with what's going on with her. She was not worked up for hypercoagulability. She had a stroke. I don't know if nobody knew she had a stroke in her brainstem from a thrombus in her, something that became the cause of the canceling of the J&J vaccine was a thrombus in the skull, quite literally, that's associated with stroke. She had that for some reason. I'm like, that doesn't just happen. There's got to be some coagulation problem, and they didn't look at that, and they had her on Coumadin, and I couldn't understand why they weren't using some of the more modern anticoagulants. And so I just sat down and said, I'm concerned about her health care. I made like 4 issues for her doctors that needed addressing. Fine. Didn't think anything more about it. Next morning I wake up, Drudge Report, front page, finally a doctor says she's not suitable for office, which has nothing to do with what I was talking about. Zero. CNN went berserk. And I was never allowed back on their airway again. And 2 weeks later, we'd already planned we were going to stop the HLN show. So it looked like they'd canceled the HLN show. And I said, look, let me go out. I'll be... It was a great experience on that show for me. And I said, look, I'll go set the record straight. Let me go out and shut up, just shut up. And right? Never asked back to...
You had a gag order for a year.
Yeah, well, I sort of signed up for that, though, to be fair. But yes, they didn't ask me back for anything else. And, and that was that. And I used to do MSNBC, CNBC, HLN, CNN, and Fox. And that's just what we all used to do, right?
Yeah.
The sort of, I don't know if you experienced this, but the sort of prep for an episode would be, do you have something to say? Yes. All right, we'll see you at 7:00.
Yeah.
That was about it.
Yeah.
Like not trying to work it a certain way or anything. Just, you got something to say? Say it. Good.
So, Drew, we have the other guest, and I think he only has like a half hour.
Yes, he only has to the top of the hour. So Andrew and I will keep this conversation going in a minute. We are going to pivot a little bit to the Raw Egg Nationalist. He's the author of Anonymously Yours, the essays 2020-2024. He is the brains and writer behind Baby Gravy 9, and he has some interesting opinions there. He has multiple books on health and fitness, including the Eggs Benedict option, which explores food-related aspects of societal change. So interesting. He is the raw egg nationalist. We will bring him in after this break, and Chef Gruel will stay with me all the way to the end. I'm watching you on the Restream and the Rumble Rants, so stay with us. We'll be right back. The Wellness Company knows that taking charge of your family's healthcare is a top priority, and that is why they are constantly innovating to deliver the products and services to help you be rationally ready for an emergency. They've added a medical kit for kids to treat over 20 childhood illnesses: nausea, vomiting, allergies, asthma, bioterror, God forbid, croup, ear infections, lice, and more. And you can also order the kids kit with an EpiPen. Carefully sourced, great price. If there's a risk of anaphylaxis for your kids, you want that EpiPen. That can be in all kits, each customized for a different purpose. It comes, of course, with a telemedicine consultation and a guidebook, and you can replenish the meds up to 2 years after the date of purchase. So go to drdrew.com/2WC for 10% off any medical emergency kit or supplements. That is drdrew.com/TWC. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid, it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15.
Dr. Drew said the best way to quit drinking is by going cold turkey, and he's a doctor, so why would you question doctors?
Dr. Drew called me unfixable.
More information together about this by an important longevity organization as the singular most important longevity supplement out there, particularly named so for this year. So I take Fatty 15, my entire family does. And if nothing else, the hurricanes remind us that we should be prepared. It's the emergency kit from TWC. We can't rely on the government. Nor should we, right? We should be doing this for ourselves. And thank God TWC helps us do that. And then, of course, we do try to be careful with our partnerships. And that couldn't be more true today than with our friends at Paleo Valley. And of course, with guests, Andrew and Charlie. Well, I'm going to talk about Paleo Valley, of course. The protein sticks are superior to the store-bought jerky by orders of magnitude, impeccably sourced. Bunch of different meats and seasonings. This is the chicken, which I love. There's the pork. There's venison and beef. You tried them? They're so good. Yeah, they're so good. And they really pay very close attention to where they get it. So it's back in stock, everything. The chicken's back in stock. Go to drdrew.com/Paleo Valley for 15% off the first order, or subscribe to get 20% off so you do not run out. Again, do not forget also there's the Born Broth, which we run out of all the time because Susan is scooping this stuff up all day long in her coffee. But I'm so great. Why anybody would have a convenience store stick or a beef jerky when you have this. These things are so carefully done. I take them when I travel. I cannot tell you how many times they've saved me on airplanes.
Our kids crush those.
Right?
Right.
And the chicken is only like 60 calories. Let me see what it is. 68. I'm looking at the beef. Beef is 80. I think the chicken is 60.
They have chicken back in stock now. They ran out. They were so popular.
Yep. But
they're so healthy for your kids.
I should put you in touch
I
with
wish I had that for my kids.
I know.
But, I mean, Lauren had to stop them from going in the drawer. Like,
Really?
we're like, you're on your 7th. We're about to go to bed. This isn't good for your stomach.
Oh,
I'm not even kidding.
Well, I have found in
no,
terms
it is
of
good for your stomach.
well, the alleged
Apparently,
Maybe just
because
not
of the
before bed.
fermented.
Maybe not 7 before bed. Yeah,
Seven for a
that's the line.
3-year-old.
Oh no! So okay, I won't even comment on
Kids are
that.
animals.
This is the chicken.
Correct.
Chicken is 45 calories. 45 calories. And so if you're worrying about diet management, I mean, we didn't get into the whole obesity issue.
Yeah.
This is a perfect way to get
Every
protein,
time
low
Robin
fat.
comes over, she's like, "Can I have a Paleo Valley beef
Oh,
stick,
yes, she
please?"
does. I'm aware of it. So let's
She's a
bring,
big fan.
let's
She's
bring
never,
a,
she never eats, so
Are
we're
you-
gonna. But we are gonna eat the food that you brought. Thank you so much. The
Yes.
dog is going nuts right now.
yes.
And smell the short ribs and the lobster. She's just staring at me
This
like,
is
what-
the lobster, right?
Yeah, and that's that California spiny lobster, local.
Oh my
Gotta
God. And
hold
we
it.
eat it, just scoop it out with the masa chips?
yeah.
or?
After this, we're all going to chow
Exactly.
down and
Okay, we're going to do that. Oh, I can't wait. But first, I got to bring in my new next guest, which is the Raw Egg Nationalist, author of Anonymously Yours, Baby Gravy 9 on X. I'm going to call him Charles for the sake of this program. Charles, thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So I read something you wrote today, and in fact, I guess I neglected to bring up your newest book, which you put an X post about, The Last Men, Liberalism and the Death of Masculinity. Or I guess it's coming next year. Are you able to get into that now? Can we talk about that book and what's coming?
Yeah, of course we can talk about that. So the book basically follows on from the Tucker Carlson documentary, The End of Men, which I was a part of in 2022. You may remember that. That really sort of broke the internet for a good few weeks after the trailer dropped, I think in April of 2022. That was the documentary that focused on America's health crisis, the crisis of masculinity, testosterone decline, fertility decline, and it had some pretty striking imagery in it. We had one of my friends, putting a red light machine on his testicles in the Vitruvian Man pose on top of a rock at Alex Jones's Texas ranch. It was all very funny, and it generated a lot of discussion and a lot of hysteria, actually, really. But it was a serious documentary. It was about masculine decline, testosterone decline, fertility decline, and the causes, and in particular, exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, things like BPA, phthalates, PFAS, etc., which are ubiquitous chemicals. They're found absolutely everywhere in consumer goods, in food, water, the air, everywhere. And so the book really, The Last Men, is following on from the themes of The End of Men. I'm talking about the precipitous decline of testosterone, of masculine decline more broadly, and the causes, and perhaps, just perhaps, some of the things that we can do individually and maybe also collectively to reverse that decline and maybe usher in a new golden age of masculinity and testosterone increase.
That would be nice. A golden age of anything would be welcome right now. So did you come across a book, Estrogenation, when you were doing research for this project?
Yes, yeah, I have come across that book. That's a very, very handy book, actually. That's a book that I have I've turned over the corner of practically every single page in that book, actually, because there's at least one nugget of wisdom, one scientific study that's worth looking at on every single page. It's a great book.
Yeah, and he really went deep into the science, and I interviewed him about maybe 8 or 10 years ago, and he was raising the alarm, and there were scientists then that were profoundly concerned about what we were heading into here. And I appreciate you bringing this into the sort of mainstream discourse. How does it affect you? In this new book, you say you're going to talk about hormonal theory and political theory. How do those two things go together?
Well, I think quite obviously, testosterone levels influence politics. Testosterone levels influence male behavior, and that has big knock-on effects on the collective level. And I mean, there have been studies that substantiate certain aspects, let's say, of political affiliation, but also of behavior more broadly. Low testosterone men behave differently from men with normal or high levels of testosterone. And I mean, it's been my central contention that a society of low testosterone, men who are fat, depressed, anxious, isolated, is much easier to govern than a society of high testosterone men who are resilient, who are self-reliant in particular, and aren't prepared to put up with bullshit from an overweening government.
And we have a trend these days to replace testosterone in men as they age, and even in women. Is that having a measurable effect in a reverse sense on any of this? Of course, it's all older men, so people may have actually been past their sort of politically active age group. What do you think about that?
I think in general, actually, that we are starting to resort to testosterone replacement therapy too readily. I think, actually, I mean, this is something that I say often when I talk on Twitter, and elsewhere, is that actually there are very simple things that you can do that will have a profound effect on your testosterone levels.
Not be obese.
Thing that people actually, not be obese, but I mean, one thing that people don't actually pay enough attention. One thing that people don't pay enough attention to is sleep. So if you can improve your sleep, you can dramatically improve your testosterone levels. And it's a fact that actually people are sleeping less and less well now for various reasons, including exposure to blue light, the ubiquity of blue light, of screens. Screen time is only increasing with time. But actually, I mean, there have been studies that show, for example, that if you double your sleep from 4 to 8 hours a night, you can double your testosterone. So I think that people are reaching for the testosterone gels and the testosterone injections a little too readily. I wouldn't deny that testosterone replacement therapy
I
can
totally
be
agree with you.
trustful.
I can't tell you how often I'm saying to people who ask me questions about their testosterone replacement, what's your diagnosis? Why are you at 35 years old on testosterone? That would be a medical condition. That why all of a sudden 35-year-olds with low testosterone? That's not normal, that something's going on. And resistance training and diet, and you're kind of leaning in. Do you have some diet ideas too, Chef Gruel?
You just eat more meat, eat more seafood.
Eat more meat, eat more meat, less seed oils, right?
Yes.
Anything on a dietary front, Charles, you're thinking of other than this?
Well, I would just say, I mean, I'm a big fan of Weston A. Price and his classic book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, which was written in the 1930s, and how different I think the course of the 20th century in terms of public health would have been if the insights of Weston A. Price had been absorbed into the mainstream rather than being ignored. One thing that Weston A. Price was absolutely certain about when he surveyed traditional societies around the world in perfect health was that they built their diets around nutrient-dense animal foods. They ate nose to tail. They ate things like organ meat, blood products, fat products, milk, dairy, seafood, and they built their diets around these nutrient-dense animal foods, and that's why they were in perfect health. So, I mean, my basic advice to everybody is build your diet around nutrient-dense animal foods as much as you possibly can.
Andrew, want to follow on to that? You're nodding vigorously.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and the thing is that what the government has done is that it's broken all this food down to this blank slate, and then they try and add the vitamins and supplements back, right? So the government says, "Oh, we're going to add this, we're going to add this." It's like a canvas when you can just be eating the food in its raw state, be getting more, and not going to, you're not going to end up wearing a dress.
It's let's get into that. But Bourdain, towards the end of his time at CNN, he was focusing on nose to tail use of animals. I remember when he went to a goat place, a goat chef, and was eating the goat asshole because he was eating every single piece of the goat. And there's a famous even on what's the chef's table, there's a butcher what makes he was supposed to be a veterinarian, and he makes a big issue of against stem to stern use of the animal. That is sort of philosophically unsound not to, and it's also not healthy.
Well, yeah, and that's also this removal of humans from Earth, right? And kids, and that's why I want to get them back to food. Is that I recall when we were growing up, right? We used to have to raise rabbits in some of our culinary programs, and then ultimately you have to harvest the rabbit, and you have to serve the rabbit. And let me tell you what, no one ever overcooked that rabbit. They treated it with the utmost respect. It was the same thing that they raised. Right.
Yeah.
And then it was the same thing that they had to cook, and they ate every single piece of that rabbit and used every piece of it. We just think food, grows on trees, right? We think steak comes from a tree, which would be wonderful. But we got to get closer to the earth and understand where our food comes from.
And so, Charles, back to the BPAs and things. What do we do? How do we protect ourselves? Is it all plastics avoid, all hands on deck? Should we be measuring testosterone levels more aggressively and urging people to pay attention to their metabolic health with greater systematization?
I definitely think people should pay more attention to their metabolic health, yes. And I think people, first of all, need to understand the scale of the problem. The scale of the problem is enormous. I mean, we've created a world where actually you cannot avoid endocrine disrupting chemicals. You can't avoid these obesogens. You can't avoid toxic exposures at all. You could go to Antarctica and you would still be inhaling microplastics. You could go to the bottom of the ocean and there would be microplastics there too. So, I mean, it's sobering, and I often, I get the impression sometimes that when I tell people about this, that actually they start to despair a little bit. But what you really need to do is you need to accept, okay, it's a huge problem. It is a huge problem. We can't totally avoid exposure to these chemicals. But what we can do is we can do meaningful things that actually aren't that difficult to do, that can significantly reduce our exposures. So like you say, reducing your reliance on plastic. Don't drink from plastic water bottles. Don't use plastic Tupperware. Don't heat your food in the microwave. Don't use a microwave at all, but certainly don't heat your food in a microwave in a plastic container. Stuff like that. Those are simple changes that you can make. Filter your water. Try to eat organic food. Grow food of your own if you can, if you have a garden. Go to trusted local sources that ensure high quality, high welfare for animals. It's going to be better quality food. Stuff like that. Reduce your reliance on personal care products as well. Things like deodorants, creams, skin products. All of these personal care products have massive amounts of endocrine disrupting chemicals. Sunscreens as well. So there definitely are things you can do. Reasonably small, easy lifestyle changes that you can make that will actually have a significant effect. If you want to start, if you want to have a hormone panel done, if you want to have a thorough assessment of your metabolic and hormonal health, then do.
It's hard. It's because we don't even have a normal range. We have a normal range, but we don't know what normal is for a given individual with testosterone. It's a very serious, challenging problem right now. I was talking to a guy yesterday that's been an athlete his whole life. He's ripped. He's 60 years old. Testosterone's 280. Mine is 1,000, and I feel like I need more. And just the way it is. It's just people have different levels of testosterone that are normal for them, and we got to figure out. We got to get more science involved in how to assess it for a given individual, as well as just generally avoiding these things. But let's tiptoe. I've only got you for a few more minutes. Let's tiptoe into the landmines here. What's happened to men? What's going on here? What happened? It's funny. I'll set it up this way. Are you in Great Britain right now?
I am. Yeah, for my sins, I am in Great Britain.
Okay. All right. Good luck. Good luck to all that. But I've seen what's going on there. But I've also become fascinated with French politics, and I listen to a lot of French radio and television. And I was thinking this morning, I thought, wow, there's a lot of women, both in the politics and on the television, for French journalists, who are very even, and I don't want to say masculine because that isn't quite right, but they were not. They were just extremely even-keeled and even-handed, and I appreciated their input and their thought and their the way they went at the questions and things. And they go at it a little bit, And the men were also very. I will take aim at the men. Were also very, very respectful, but very thoughtful, but very, very feminine. The French politicians, a lot of them, they felt to me kind of feminine. Is that the future for all? Is that because of the biological metabolic problems? They weren't fat. They aren't fat in France. I guess I'm setting you up to ask what has happened to men. What's going on here? No, everywhere. Is it a good thing, bad thing? What's going on?
So this is one of the principal themes of the book that I'm writing at the moment, is the fact that there is simultaneously this biological assault on masculinity taking place, the endocrine disruptors, the sedentary lifestyles, obesity and poor diet, etc. But there's also a broader political and cultural assault on masculinity taking place as well. And it's kind of like it's like a pincer movement, really, almost. You've got, from the one side, you've got the biological, then you've got the other factors as well. It's very difficult to be a traditionally masculine man now. It just is, and there's, not only is it harder on a biological level, but also actually it's just...
Is it, or I don't know, because I hear a lot of complaints from young women. Where are the men? Where are the men? Why? There's a lot of it, at least in this country. There's a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I mean, I think that there's of course, women still want, even liberated feminist women still want a masculine man in certain scenarios, particularly the bedroom, let's say. But then there's this broader sort of kind of cultural henpecking, political henpecking that goes on, where actually men aren't allowed to express a fuller sense of their masculinity beyond, what they might or might not get up to in the bedroom. And so there is a kind of double standard at work, definitely. And I think that it would be, we need a fuller conception of masculinity, a conception of masculinity that isn't limited to very narrow spheres, but actually allows men sort of holistically to be masculine in the way that they once were, and to express themselves as men rather than women. I just think the
idea of masculine, being not a good thing or being pejorative is as problematic, let's say, as celebrating excessive masculinity or excessive bro kind of stuff. You have any thoughts for Charles?
I think it all comes back to the food, right? And it's the chicken and the egg conversation, right? So if the food emasculates people and it takes that testosterone down by virtue of that piece, well, then you've got the massive media complex that can be wordsmithiness and over-intellectualizing masculinity as a movement and telling them men that they need to be less masculine. So they kind of work in tandem. But for me, it's always going to come back to the food.
When it comes to, I've noticed, through working with mental health for so many years, that when it comes to trying to figure out, nature nurture, where does alcoholism come from? Where does bipolar come? It's about 60% biological, 40% environment in almost every illness you can name. And so I'm guessing it's the same as it pertains to even in these sort of outlying trends with people are not ill, they're getting ill, and there's got to be both gene or biological and environmental factors, as always. And biological, and people they underestimate how much the biological sets up the environmental. There's a feedback loop there, but biological gets things going. And I worry about reproduction. That seems to be, Charles, happening now. Different countries for different reasons. I'm not sure that South Korea's reproduction problem is because of the estrogens from the plastics. They seem to have a cultural problem there, I think. But it's going to have a really serious effect on the human population.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a witch's brew, really. It's environmental factors, it's economic factors, it's social factors, political, cultural factors, all adding up to the simple fact of people not reproducing. And yes, I think there is definitely variation across the world. I think that the kind of problems, like you say, that are faced maybe by the South Koreans aren't necessarily the kind of problems that are faced by Americans or Europeans, but there are definitely commonalities, I think. And it poses a broader question about modernity, I think, and about what it is about the modern world in particular that seems to disincline people from having children, because it does. There seems to be something about entering the modern world that just disinclines people to have children. And, birth rates are falling across the globe. as countries join the modern world, as countries experience rising prosperity, they too, the people stop having children as well. It's a very complex problem, but I think that the environmental factors, the biological factors, have actually been neglected, and it's good now with things like The End of Men, the Tucker Carlson documentary, with RFK Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again agenda. We're actually starting to talk about these things properly for the first time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't know. But amongst the 4 parents in this room, we have 7 kids. We did okay here, and we see that as a key feature of meaning in life, I would think, and why we're on this planet. And I don't. Is it modernity from your position? Because I've been, I've seen 2 centuries in my 66 years, and you're referring to modernity as sort of like the present moment, right? But modernity kind of has been around for 100 years, really. There's something about the present moment, something about this moment that is disinclining people. Do you have any thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I agree with you.
Other than food.
Of course. And I agree 100%. I think that like what we're seeing right now is just a reaction to a lot of the biological elements, right? So, and that reaction, I think that the medical complex as well is afraid to tell people, give it to them straight. So a lot of times
we are right now weirdly political, and there's a weird inability of doctors to express themselves, sort of think independently. Something's a mess in my profession.
Well, there's this coddling that's going on, and you would know more about the medical world specifically, but it's this idea, right? Somebody comes in, their testosterone is low, and they're depressed, and they're getting obese, and instead of the doctor saying you need to eat more meat, that's okay. Love who you are. Right? It's okay. Don't worry about it. There's a laziness there. And then the whole entire medical community is just, we need to love everybody for who they are. But no, we're not helping them. We're really exacerbating the problem.
Or we give them this shot that they pay a shit ton of money for, and then they lose their muscle mass in addition to their fat, and we got a whole other problem on our hands here. And there's no free lunch in nature. There will be consequences. And I see the lawyers starting to swarm around already looking for some of those consequences, because they will be there. They will happen when you use, I'm talking about Ozempic and those drugs, GLP-1 drugs. And when you use things excessively and don't contemplate risk reward, you get risk. Well, Charles, did I leave anything out here? I promised to get you out by the top of the hour. We're right there. Any last information or last topics you'd like to throw out before I go? Because I get to eat some lobster here. I'm sorry you're not here with us, but I'm looking very forward to that.
No, it was interesting what you were just saying about Ozempic. I've written quite extensively about Ozempic for the Epoch Times and for other publications, for the American Mind, and I think that the use of Ozempic on a widespread scale is going to be a disaster. It's a totally wrong-headed approach. It's a totally wrong-headed approach to ill health. It masks the real causes of ill health, and also what it does, and I think this is very important, this is something that I say a lot, it hands even more power to Big Pharma over our lives. It's another domain of our autonomy that is being taken away. We've already surrendered control of our moods to Big Pharma. Big Pharma gives us pills to make sure we don't get anxious, to make sure we don't get depressed, to take the edge off life. And now we're supposed to surrender control of our weight and our diet to Big Pharma, who are the only ones, they tell us, who can actually control it and prevent us from getting fat. And I think that's dangerous. Events of the last 4 years should make us very, very wary.
I completely agree. And it also undermines one of the defenses we have to lowering testosterone, which is our skeletal muscle mass and resistance training. And it clearly is depleting all that. So it's only going to add, and whenever you starve yourself, and by starve, I don't mean being hungry. I mean taking less calories than your brain wants you to take. Your body goes into sort of starvation mode, and it's lower. The first thing to go is sex drive and reproduction. So the Ozempic is going to further exacerbate this problem. Now, if we did it as part of a comprehensive plan where somebody's on it for 6 weeks or 8 weeks while we get things going and they get their diet going, you could end up in a good place if you attend to all these metabolic issues in the long term. But what I'm seeing more and more literature on is just keep them on the Ozempic. Keep them on, keep them on, keep them on. The benefits accrue over time. Well, I'm sure they do when people are severely obese, but everybody, nope, you're going to see lots of problems. Egg, the Raw Egg Nationalist, anonymously yours. The new book coming out shortly is called The Last Men. This is all really important stuff. I suggest you check out his books and follow him on X at babygravy9. He's also got rawegnationalist.com and mansworldmag.online. Is that your Substack?
Man's World Mag is my men's magazine, which is kind of like an updated version of Playboy. I do have a Substack. That's rawegstack.com.
Thank you for spending time with us, and appreciate you being here.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Interesting stuff, right? All stuff that we would have gotten into, I think, even without him, because it's sort of top of mind kind of stuff. I want to bring out, if you don't mind, the masa chips and some lobster. Because will you eat with me?
Yeah. And I got some of our house-made salsa here too. We grow these tomatoes right outside the restaurant.
Now, he did say something that caught my attention, and I think I saw Lauren nodding her head, your wife, which is grow your own food.
Yeah.
Which is, Scotty, we don't think about that.
Well, we don't. And I think that there's been so many advances, especially in the world of like multi-trophic aquaculture and vertical farming, that we can actually produce a significant amount of food in a small space. And those advances, I call a lot of this like blue investment when it comes to the aquaculture piece of it, have been generally ignored on both kind of a
blue
wholesale.
Investment, meaning to the ocean?
Anything like seafood related, right? So we can grow. We did this at the Huntington Beach High School. We actually had a program where we grew vegetables.
I'm sorry, I can't look at this and not eat it.
No, go crazy.
I've had your lobster before. It's always amazing.
And
Best lobster roll I ever had. Did you get exposed? You must have eaten a ton of those in Maine.
Well, that was the thing.
That's where you learned how to do it.
And then I said, it was hilarious because I said, I'm never going to break down another lobster, right? They break your fingers open. You get these little mini infections. It's horrible. And I broke down thousands of them. First job when I went back to the Ritz.
Come on. That is so good.
And for this lobster, this is both California spiny lobster and Maine lobster mixed. Now, why that's important is that the California spiny lobster season is only 6 to 8 weeks. Now, I used
to go lobster diving when I was a kid.
It's an amazing...
Actually, we'd poach. We'd go at night.
It's an amazing species, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know why you'll never see it on restaurants here? The majority of it gets shipped to China.
Wow.
Because China, before the Lunar New Year, this California spiny lobster is a signifier of wealth and prosperity, and it's symbolic, and China will pay $100, $200 a pound for it. It all goes to China. It's unbelievable. So we have our own local fishermen that fish for our restaurant.
How do they even know about California spiny lobsters?
Oh, it's funny. The Chinese, their per capita consumption of seafood is like quadrupled out of the United States. Oh, wow. They love seafood. They understand it. They know it. And that
tastes like you could serve that as a soup if you heated it up.
Yeah, almost like a gazpacho.
Right? Exactly.
We do a nice roasted tomato in there.
Yeah.
So they seek out these lobsters. They seek out seafood, and might explain a lot of China's dominance on the world stage as they eat more seafood.
I see Susan looking longingly. You have to come on camera. You sure?
Chef Gruel, I feed my babies salmon like within months of being born. Both of my kids eating salmon. They love salmon. It's so healthy for them. We eat it like weekly now.
How do you source salmon? I hear lots of different things about that. What do you recommend?
My perspective on salmon is that a lot of times people try and pit the farmed against the wild. I think that they're two different species. So, and literally they are, right? Wild is typically the Pacific salmon and the farmed is the Atlantic salmon. The Atlantic salmon is commercially extinct, right? So it's all going to be farmed when it comes to Atlantic salmon. There's been major progress made in open ocean aquaculture when it comes to salmon. But I look for things like logos like the BAP logo, which is best aquaculture practices. So that's where they'll certify the feed, the farm, the distribution, the entire supply chain. Slave labor is an issue in seafood. So when I do buy farmed salmon, I'll buy something that has that BAP logo. But when I want the Pacific, I get Alaskan.
Where do you see that? Where's the BAP logo?
It's on the bag or on the box. It's right on there. It's two little fish in a blue logo. I think that we've done a poor job of educating Americans about...
I'm clueless most of the time. Pretty much everything I know, I learned from you. I'm not a young man.
Well, what's funny is we did this focus group when I started at the aquarium. We asked everyone, what's the healthiest protein you can eat? And everyone unequivocally said seafood, right? Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
And then we said, what protein do you eat? And they're like, chicken. Well, right? So then you ask, why don't... And they're just so confused about seafood, they don't eat it. We have the lowest per capita consumption of seafood of any country in the world.
About what the different fish is, or
where to buy it, how to buy it, mercury, PCBs, all of this. The sensationalism in the press about, if you eat the seafood from here, the seafood would poop on top of one another, or you're going to get mercury poisoning, or all of these things that when they get to the counter to order food, they say, screw it, I'll have the chicken. And the interesting thing about chicken is most of the chicken we're eating is so high in the omega-6 fatty acids because of the grain feed that it's creating that bigger, wider imbalance between omega-6 to omega-3.
Think you're fatty, everybody. Yes, I'm aware of that. And chicken is not a great protein source either.
It's not. I mean, chicken just tastes good because you can put anything on it, and then it tastes like whatever you put on it.
Yeah, I mean, it is protein. I don't want to say, I'd rather they eat that than some of the other things out there in the world. But it's not, it's a rely on it so much. How about in terms of the diversity of protein sources?
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that I've tried to do as a chef, especially is educate people on how easy it is to cook things outside of your primal center plate cuts, right? Like your fillet, et cetera. Get the beef cheek in there, get the organ meat in there. Make sure that you're using a lot of the ruminant, the lamb, for example, different cuts of animal. That's the fun thing.
Also, different kinds of, bison meat, for instance. I love bison. I love venison.
Bison, venison, elk, there's even exotic animals out there. Kangaroo is a big one. We did a huge catering for kangaroo when I was a younger chef. It's actually not a bad.
I had alligator once and it was really good.
Oh, I love alligator.
Yeah, it's like a good source of protein. It tastes like shredded beef or something. It's like if it's properly made.
Yeah, and what's funny too is that when you get into alligator, I start thinking about things like lionfish, which is an invasive species that's killing a lot of our marine ecosystems, and that's an area where the government should say to fishermen, catch as much of this as you can. Let's create a market for this invasive species so we're both helping the environment and getting people to eat more of the right types of seafood.
Yeah.
So there's these kind of fun things we can do within this marine and even terrestrial ecosystem, which is very biodynamic when getting people to eat more, but they got to know how to cook. That's what it comes down to.
Susan's like, here, what is that?
People need to know how to cook.
The basics. The
And
very
you
simple.
don't want to overcook fish either.
Yeah.
Fish, it's so easy to cook.
Oh, the dog is eating the chip.
I don't know.
It's beef tallow.
She's getting to the chips.
Teach Drew how to cook. We could have a TV show called Teaching Drew How to Cook.
Yeah.
Gruel and Drew. Drew and Gruel. We'll do something. I'm happily would do that. So
Drew
let's
and
step back. Caleb, I feel like you have some questions in there. Do you have something on your mind?
Oh, no. I'm just posting replies to the comments of people who they're saying they don't really like salmon that much. And that's usually just a case of you're either cooking it too long or you're not finding a really good salmon source. My wife was the same way. She hated it for like the first 20 years of her life until I cooked it for her.
Imagine that.
Well, because she had a bad experience. When you have a bad experience with something like salmon, it sticks in your head and you don't want to eat it for years because it was a bad case of salmon. But you have to find a really good fresh source. You have to cook it, not super long. You don't want it to be raw, but you don't want to overcook it. It's delicious. Get the good seasonings, guys. Some little bit of brown sugar, especially if there's the skin is still on it. Put some brown sugar on the skin so it gets crispy. Oh, yeah. We eat this every week. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what my first date with my wife was cooking salmon for her. So, look, guys.
It'll raise your testosterone if you cook.
Well, I always joke. I mean, scallops for me with Lauren, it was love at first scallop. That was it. Seafood does a lot.
Yeah, she loved it.
Where'd Lauren grow up again? I forget.
She's here. She's from Huntington Beach.
Huntington Beach. You guys met out here.
Yep.
And did you train in a big institution like your husband for art institute? Art. Got it. So interesting. Art Institute had food cooking. That's interesting.
Yeah, Art Institute was a great culinary institution, and it was funny because one of her classmates was interviewing me for a culinary project they were doing, and that's how we met.
Oh my God, how funny. Yeah. Interesting. So let's step back from food for a second and talk about politics. Charles proposed some sort of provocative ideas about men not being sufficiently men. Adam talks about this all the time. I don't know if he talked to you about it when you were on his show, but he's very concerned that men aren't in the mix. That things are everything needs to, and I'm guilty of saying this. I think that the female brain was an excellent thing to have in our politics and everything, and he's sort of taking issue that maybe we've gone too far. Any thoughts on that? And maybe it is the estrogenizing of men. That men aren't being men enough when they do get involved.
Well, I think that men need to embrace who they are and their masculine impulse, right? And that DNA, and then the women need to do the same themselves. And then the combination of the two creates this kind of this symbiotic relationship in politics where we have reasonable, approachable political theory and policy. But what happens is that the men are trying to become women in the way in which they think and act, which then creates the imbalance.
Did you see Jennifer Gardner talking about Tim Walz? Oh, it's so sexy. She's a 52-year-old mom. It was weird.
But then if that was the case, then I would just prefer that a woman was running for that position, right? I would prefer the woman than the man who's kind of just leaning over there because number one, it's either it's a fraud. Number two, maybe there's some chemical imbalance. Or number three, then let's just go full female.
Yes, I completely agree with you. We need a spectrum of people, and so now we're heading into the elections, only a couple of weeks away. The betting markets have gone way towards Trump all of a sudden, and in the face of that, it seems like the Harris campaign has gone into a kind of panic mode, and they're eating each other up and blaming each other, and Biden seems kind of pissed and sort of that he was put in this position at all. Any sense of where this is going? What your thoughts are on it? I don't know. And I mean, we have RFK, we have Elon Musk, who would be just wonderful to have in Washington.
Yeah, and Lauren and I were talking about this on the way up here. We're surprised now that it's kind of become somewhat chic to be pro-Trump. It used to be hidden, but now you're starting to see a lot of people come out and say, on this pro-Trump side. And there's been a little bit of a tipping point, I think, that occurred. Nobody's going to be able to predict exactly what happens because anything can happen. Sure. I don't think there's any October surprises, right? With Trump, everything's baked into the cake. Nothing is going to surprise anybody.
Right.
With Kamala, there could be surprises, and with the Harris-Walz ticket, there could be a significant amount of surprise. However, will the media cover it? So if we're left with the numbers that we're looking at today, obviously it's looking like it's very much in Trump's favor. The question then becomes, the election begins at that point, or the real work begins at that point, because then how do we avoid another gridlock type situation if Trump were to win where everybody is undermining him? How do we get the Elons and the RFKs in the right place where they can operate and streamline their knowledge?
I talked to Laura Trump about it and Don Jr., and they both said the same thing. It's like we learned the first time these things, we have some ideas, and now they've not been explicit about what they are, so it could be just words. But you're absolutely correct that there has to be some sort of meaningful change. Things have gotten. To me, there are two things I have faith in. Charles brought up the golden age. Maybe things will get better. They've certainly been kind of shitty for a while. Golden age would be nice. But the two things I look for is all what we've been talking about with RFK Jr. and really changing. Looking at vaccines carefully, changing the cozy relationship between the regulators and the pharma companies, undoing the pharma influence on medical publications, and undoing so much what we've been talking about in terms of the food sourcing and the food industry. It would be a miracle. It would be amazing. I mean, there would be so much benefit to the American public from that. And then Musk coming in and downsizing the government by God knows how much.
Yeah.
I mean, look, how much of Twitter did he fire? 80%? I mean, I can see him doing something like that with the federal government too.
Well, just look at Argentina. I mean,
I know. He just came in and closed a bunch of departments.
Yeah. But I think that we look at these candidates, right, and they're figureheads for something bigger, and we forget about the people who are actually creating the problems or benefits in our lives, and those are the bureaucrats, right?
Yes.
So I talk about the seafood and the open ocean aquaculture policy. Not once have you heard about the National Marine Fisheries Service, or NOAA, which is the agency overseeing that, and why there isn't a U.S. open ocean aquaculture policy. It's like, who's going to get in the right place?
Why don't we get you in front of RFK Jr. if he has a chance to get his claws on Washington? Let's get you in there to bring those issues up.
I got some ideas.
His eye's not on that ball right now.
But he knows seafood and sustainability, which I think is important.
Well, but you have some very specific ideas that I bet he'd be wide open to. He's very much about solving problems, and it would be just phenomenal if we can go do this stuff. But and I want to get him involved in the drug and alcohol stuff too, because that's a mess. God knows. But, well, listen, I appreciate the lobster. It is the best lobster I ever had. How do I know whether I'm eating the Maine lobster or the California lobster?
Well, the Maine lobster has claws, right? So
I
we
saw
mix
the
a little
claws in there. Yep,
and then
I
the
saw that.
California lobster is going to be more tender. The tail meat's going to be sweet and tender.
So, Susan, you're going to die when you have this. So good. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you coming all the way out here to do this. I appreciate the food you brought us. You've been very generous with us at the restaurant. We've been to the Calico Fish House. Go to the Calico Fish House. You will see Chef Gruel and his wife, Lauren, there. You may see us there. We try to go there whenever we drive through. So don't we? I mean, we love going there.
We love it. Huntington Beach.
Yeah. What else would you like people to do?
I think
Get the cookbook.
Yep. You go to Brave Books or go to andrewcookbook.com to pre-order it. Follow our American Gravy Show on X, Rumble. I'm Chef Gruel and Andrew Gruel, and we'll have a lot more exciting stuff to announce. We're going into what I call as our Super Bowl season. So the holidays is like when cooking is really going to be on the mantle, if you will.
Interesting.
So we're excited about some fun projects over the next couple months.
Oh, you want us to announce them here as they come up? Whatever they are, or are they just stuff you're doing, like people you're serving at the...
No, we're going to have some more shows launching, and we'll let you know.
Oh, we got to do all this stuff. I can't wait to be a part of this and help you out with it. All right, everybody, we appreciate you being here. Let's look at the schedule coming up. I think we have Scott Atlas in here tomorrow, if I remember right. And then
Wait, that's
hold on. Wait, that was from last week.
Yeah, well, I guess
That
it
was
didn't
last
update.
week's.
But yeah, Dr. Scott Atlas is coming up tomorrow.
Okay, Scott Atlas, Darshan Shah, Elizabeth Pipko, I think she's coming in, Brittany Meyer, Cheryl Ackison should be very interesting, Viva Fry and Emily Kaplan, I'm looking forward to that. Of course, Salty Cracker coming back on November 7th for a noontime show. Susan's show, do you want to talk about your show this week?
We're not having a show this week.
But you're putting something up, though.
We're gonna put up the Skank Fest episode when we were on the Skank.
So let me explain. We were at a comedy festival called the Skank Fest, run by the Legion of Skanks. You'll go with us one day. They're
I don't know. Maybe
Andrew has this huge smile. It's like, what? What are you talking about? They are
at Lauren here.
They are a famous comedy group in New York City, and do you know who the Insane Clown Posse is?
Yeah.
Okay, in the fashion of the Insane Clown Posse, they developed the idea of having this sort of gathering phenomenon
comedians.
every year, and it's become one of the biggest comedy festivals in the world. It's huge, and the comedians love it.
There's a lot of testosterone there.
A lot of good testosterone there.
Yeah.
And
you can't miss it.
when we were there, Susan brought a psychic and brought upstairs a couple of...
we did Calling Out with Susan Pinsky with
cool.
Mark Norman.
Mark Norman is one of the comedians that she worked with. He's
and
great.
Drew Montana from what was that group of people that you did the panel with?
The kids from Philly. What are those?
The
Do-Rag group from Philly.
something.
Do-Rag group from Philly.
So anyways, they made them cry. Colby made them cry. It was very cute. We're going to upload it this week, right, Caleb?
Oh, he's just finding out about it, I suppose.
Yes. I'm 90% sure I can get it edited in time. So yeah, it'll be up this week.
All right.
Yeah, and then we'll be back next week.
All right. Full time.
And also Halloween.
Again, I've already forgotten. Tomorrow is Scott Atlas. That should be very interesting. He's been a steady presence throughout the COVID debacle. And you said, COVID got you mobilized a little bit. Certainly, so many of us woke up to so many things during that thing. It sort of tore the dressing off what was going on in this country, and it made things obvious. I still haven't gotten over so much of it because I just couldn't believe what California State could do, and what they're capable of is just mind-boggling. I was sleepwalking as far as it pertained to that.
Yeah.
So, all right, Chef Andrew Gruel, thank you so much. Thank you, Chef. And we will thank Lauren. Thank you for bringing him here. We appreciate it very much. Thank you to your kids for pulling both of you away from their day. And we will see you all. Do get the cookbook, and links from the episode are up on the screen right now. And we will see you tomorrow at 3:00. See you then.
Ta-ta.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.